Hello, everybody. Grant Hunter here for another Product Growth Leaders topic of the week. Steve, last week I was reading a study. I've known it for a while, but from about 10 years ago, that was done on middle market companies from the National Center for the Middle Market. They view 10 million to a billion as the middle market. That's a really big middle market, but most of the companies we serve fit into that middle market. And it was studying companies that what they did growth wise going into the financial collapse of '08, '09, and what they did coming out. And they found that less than 1% of those companies grew into the collapse and doubled their growth coming out of the collapse. They called them sustained growers. And one of the attributes they had that other companies that didn't weren't growing like them didn't have was a focus on market expansion. And so with that, I decided to make our topic this week market development. And I view market development as a critical role of product management. What's your take?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I have talked for years about uh, how much we focus on small revisions to our existing products based on feedback from our existing salespeople and our existing customers, and so much opportunity in either building new products or taking on new markets. And I'm reminded from your thing there. I saw a thought leader speak in the 2008 timeframe. And he's like, business is going to suck for a couple of years. Here's what you should do: double down on innovation. And I was kind of thunderstruck. I would have thought this would have been the perfect time to double down on market development, on understanding your market better, understanding new markets better, getting in touch with markets. But, innovation for most people means build cool shit and hope somebody wants to buy it, as opposed to truly understanding problems in the existing market or a new market.
I would argue that in my Drucker definition of innovation, market development is innovation because you're bringing new value to a group of customers, a market of customers, or a segment of customers who didn't have that value before. Just like product development is, right? You're solving a problem. Innovation in we talked about innovation a couple of weeks ago, but innovation can be the term can be abused at times, and so
Yeah, I
we're
think
going to
most
talk.
people equate invention with innovation. As we talked about, I think once before, we build, measure, and adapt, except nobody is measuring or adapting. They're just building and building and building and building.
Yeah, I see that. So we're going to talk about market development. We've got a great panel today. We've got some returning people who've been away for a little while: Brian Weber, Paul Hatala, Calvin Marshall. We've got Glenn Pride, who's a regular, and Cory Bryan joining us today. And we asked in the community on Monday, our first question was, what are the key things you should do as you take your product into a new market or segment? And we got a lot of good results. Joni Host, a new participant, I believe she's one of the people in our Principles of Product Strategy public preview, said one key is to analyze the market and understand the value proposition for your product in that new segment or market you're going to. Great way to talk about it. Paul Hatala, I thought if you would stop after those first two words, it could have been a Joy McCaffrey answer. Dummy up. Talk to me about dummying up.
So dummy up is actually a term out of the Sandler sales training. I find a lot of parallels between the two. And the idea there was a new salesperson asks a lot of questions because they don't know anything. An intermediate salesperson thinks they know things, so they stop asking questions. And then an experienced salesperson acts like a new salesperson and that they ask questions, but they're on purpose.
Yeah.
And so I see this as getting to the phase where you say, okay, I know things, but there's things I don't know as well, or I shouldn't assume them. So you just have to act like you know nothing, basically.
Uh, the Sandler sales stuff resonates. I had a training with somebody, a marketing person, who said that Xerox actually did research and they found that sales regression started happening in 12 to 18 month in because the salespeople thought they knew everything and
Yeah.
there was nothing else for them to learn. And it's a good lesson for us as product management, right? We need to keep learning, or we lose touch with what's going on, and especially when we're looking at good markets. So, awesome take, and I like the take of dummy up. Is dummy up the Sandler language?
Yes. Yeah. It's actually one of
Okay,
the rules.
I like it. I like it.
That kind of dovetails with my answer, which is a little weedy, but don't assume just because you have things that they may need that you know everything.
I agree with that. You said if you're approaching it as an adjacent market move, never assume apples to apples, even down to the verbiage you use. So if it was apples to apples, it wouldn't be a new segment. It would be the same segment.
Right? A lot of people that particular experience, they did make assumptions.
Well, let's be honest. Too often we don't use the right verbiage for the segments we're in, let alone the new ones that we go into. But know thy market, but don't make assumptions because of being similar to an existing one. I love that take on it. You have a specific example, you said?
Yeah. Okay. A company was moving in to the food service area from CPG.
I know that company.
And they use CPG language to describe like the components of
everything.
And they got their lunch handed to them because they were similar
problems,
concepts and problems, but they had completely different words for them. So they go in there with their German dictionary to a French restaurant.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna fly. I mean, it's that simple.
It's interesting. I spent a lot of time in parts management, right? And how do we define parts? And at a company I was working with had a whole dictionary to describe different things. And it's like the thing that I may call a water fountain, like in the hall, other people call a bubbler and, water cooler. And language is so important, especially when product management and marketing were going to this place, because that's the quickest way to show people you didn't do your due diligence, right? And to Paul's point, dummy up and go make that. And Cory, I think that Glenn's response, just as fine as the last thing he said, really ties well into you. You said understand if your product is solving the exact same problem for new people or if it's genuinely a different problem. So let's understand that problem, but then let's understand the differences. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, most of the time, and I'm not a marketing person or anything attempting to be a marketing person, but I understand concepts. And the concept, I think, is if you're in a product market and you're solving this problem for this niche market, it's lawyers in California who deal with probate cases or something like that. Yep. That's a specific market. If you're trying to move to other California lawyers or other probate lawyers in North Carolina or something like that, it might be a similar market, maybe a completely different market. I don't know, but is the concepts the same, or are you trying to understand new concepts?
So how similar is the problem? How similar are the value props that they're going to be dealing with, and what language are they dealing with, and understanding those types of things? I love that. Brian Weber, you said run experiments, collect data from the experiments, ask for feedback, and move forward, pivot, stop based on the data and feedback. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes with everybody else's answer is even when you think you understand what it is, run an experiment and prove out that you know what you're talking about. Are you using the right language or whatever it is? Maybe the people in that French restaurant like to speak German. Run an experiment, find out.
Maybe they're Germans running a French restaurant.
Could be. German mafia in the French restaurant, maybe.
I don't know. And so you're taking sort of the lean approach. So you run the experiment, you learn from it, and you pivot or move forward. Okay, I got that.
Don't jump full into the new market.
Yeah, Calvin, you said learn the market, understand the problem in your product solving. It seems like we're getting a fairly consistent answer here. Talk to me about where your head is.
Yeah, I mean it is. I don't know that I can add a whole lot to what's already being said, but I mean that's really fundamental. One product may fit one market and solve that problem, but you need to make sure that same product is may solve or may not solve the problem in a new market, and just really understanding if that product does or doesn't.
Yeah, I get it. I was working for a big B2B content company, and we did engineering content. And we actually, the way we did it is we actually had vertical market industry managers. And their job was to, once they had it, is to understand the differences. 80% of it may be the same, but how do we, that final 20% in the last mile to get there? And so those industry managers were the people who were responsible for making sure we had the right language, making sure we had understood the problems and the value props. And then when it came time to go to a new market, they were, one of them or a new one of them would be assigned to help us understand and go and do that due diligence. And so it was sort of a matrix type thing with the product in the market. Cory, you have a question.
So something just hit me, and I went back and reread the question, and I didn't see the answer. So I think the question to ask is, why are we going into this new market?
That's a good question. That is a key thing that you should be doing when you're talking about it, right?
I mean, is this something that we want to do, something we're being told to do, something that customers are asking us to move into this new market? What's the reasoning for this new market being a potential target for us?
So one of the key things we should do as we take the product to a new market is understand why. Why are we taking it to the new market?
I always want to understand why.
No, I love that. And, it's a different perspective. I hadn't even thought about that. I was thinking more okay, how do we understand the problem, make sure it's similar, right? See what the commonalities are. But I think starting with the why is a great way to think about that and to do it. Steve, I'd love to get your take on this.
Well, I feel the need to quote Mark Twain. It ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. I think so often we think we know and we don't validate. I mean, we don't do discovery research. We don't do validation research. We just say, I talked to a guy, or in, Cory's example of we had a request from a customer, or maybe this was Grant's example. We had a request from a customer that is different than this new customer. So let's just take our old product, give it to this new customer. No, wait, hang on. If the buyer persona is different, we need to understand that buyer persona, because it may be substantially different, that we need to start using different language. And I don't know why I think this is a parallel, but I was doing some work with some higher ed people, and I was surrounded by subject matter experts. And I'm kind of, anti-college, anti-education. I'm anti a lot of things, but I think education is wonderful, but I think a lot of education is not particularly helpful. But nonetheless, one of the subject matter experts said, well, there is no more important relationship to a student than their faculty advisor. And everybody in the room nodded sagely. And I'm like, what kind of shit is that? I never even knew who my advisor was. The only time I encountered my advisor was when I needed to drop a class and needed a sign off. And it was just so amazing that academia had this perception that was so out of sync with my perception as a student and later on as a parent of student. And I still never met anybody's faculty advisor.
I met my faculty advisor, and he was the one who said, oh, you shouldn't take that class. You're not the best student, and that's the hard class. But he never drew the connection that I only did well in hard classes because they made me think and kept me engaged, where the easy classes, like his, were boring. But we digress. We're not talking about faculty advisors or higher ed. We're talking about going to a new product.
And my point was, they had a subject matter expert internal view of their market, and they were missing their communications because they don't understand the actual buyer. They didn't understand the parents. They didn't understand the students. But they did understand the faculty advisors. Yep. Who were not their customers.
No, I do like that. And I think it comes down to, right, discovery. You can't just blindly go in. Glenn's story of the CPG company trying to go into food service and not understanding the language and how the processes were different is critical. So we need to do some discovery work. I think even before Brian's experiments, right, we have to do a little discovery to know what experiments to run. Paul, I think that's where your dummy up came in, is the discovery to go do some of that, scouting, right, and learn it. What's your take on how the importance of that discovery?
I mean, as I look at some of the different facets of ways that people looked at this, there's I think mine was kind of more on the attitude of how it's approached. Some other people touched on the behavior or the techniques that would be employed. So I think they all come together. They're just different layers of the same puzzle.
No, it makes sense. I'm not going to talk about my answer here because I put my answer into the poll, and we'll talk about it when we go over the poll. But I think the key thing as I look at this is, right, don't make those assumptions. I think that was a great point from Glenn. Understand the problems, the similarities to and the differences in the problems, and make sure you're not using the language, right? And as Steve just pointed out in the chat, assume, right? Make an ass out of you and me, but then make a test to test them, as per Brian and Cory just put into the chat as well. So, the key thing is, actually, I'll go back. Start with why, right? Why do we want to do this? Is this a corporate initiative saying we have to do this because this is, for growth? Is this a customers asking us? What's the, impetus that starts us off? Then we go do some discovery and scout to learn to help us inform our assumptions. Then we can build some tests that we can go there. So great conversation.
I want to extend that thought just for a second. And I know we're running long on time, but as a business-oriented product manager, I should be looking at, I think all the time, I should be looking at, have we penetrated this market? Have we done everything we could do with the product and the market to make satisfied customers? But also, are there new markets who would value this customer with minor modification? Or are there new products that this market would value from us as a vendor?
And straight hands off, right?
Right. And yet, when I talk to a lot of product managers, I realize that research is not even on their list, on their to-do list. Mm-hmm. It's, listening to the sales guys, writing the JIRA ticket, reading the JIRA ticket to the development guys, and then the development guys build something, and then they go back to the sales guy and update a data sheet. And you're like, wow, I mean, that's really quite a secretarial version of product management.
I want to add two things to that comment. Now we're building on these things. And please, everybody else, jump in if you've got some other points before we move on to the poll. Two things. One, I think that our friend we were talking with yesterday, we were talking with a customer experience UX thought leader. And, she was complaining that most research that is done wrong. We go with our assumptions, or product managers and researchers go with their assumptions and create leading questions that are just validating their thing. And so truly understand and learn how to ask open-ended questions that are not leading the West that you can learn from. And I think that's a critical thing to do. And the conversation we had with her yesterday made me think about that here. The second is, I think it's a product manager's role to be continually looking for adjacencies, looking for market segments that we could be going into if the opportunity came available. And so we covered this in our Analyze the Market and Competition lesson this week in the Principles of Product Strategy course. How do we understand those adjacencies? Where are the potential things? We should have some ideas of what adjacencies may be, and we need to go to that. Cory, I love what you said. It's scientific method, right?
Yeah. I mean, do you have a hypothesis? Great. Let's see if that hypothesis proves correct or not. That similar thing that we hear in UX design or research is design like you're right, test like you're wrong. I assume that this is correct. Let's see if that's true, because I may be proven wrong, and that would be interesting to find out.
Yeah, I love that. And, I'll go back to Roger Martin, is what would have to be true for this to be, and there's another way to test it, to do that type of stuff. Any last thoughts before we move on to the poll? I know Paul Hurwitz is not here, so I'm going to assume that nobody's going to come in at the last second when I turn the poll on. All right.
Hang on, though. Is that design like you're right, test like you're wrong? Is that you? Is that yours, Cory, or are you?
No, that's been out there for a while. I'd have to see who I heard it from and attribute
it's one
it
of
to.
Those we can't find who actually said this things.
I don't know. I assume I could find somebody who said it, and
Well,
I don't know where they got it from.
I'm adding it to a presentation as we speak. So
Okay.
I think what happened was that Cory talked to a guy.
Yeah.
I have nothing new or original. I just repeat things I've heard.
That should be the citation.
Yeah, Calvin with the best bringing back things we've said in almost every single call. Steve's, I talked to a guy.
So Steve touched on something that I want to at least throw out. It hit a nerve because yesterday I agreed to visualize a very broad change in our industry and how it's going to apply to our group. And I said, it's probably something I can show in a Kanban. We have a big theme. We have epics of how we're going to approach big problems and thinking about all this stuff. And then I went and looked, I played with Trello and some of the other stuff. And I realized everyone focuses on that last mile of here's a task, here's what's to do, here's what's being done, here's what's done. Nobody then zooms out, as near as I can tell. I haven't found a tool yet that then says, because we're trying to solve this larger problem and it's a part of this even bigger problem. So I would love for someone to tell me I'm wrong about this, because I've just beat my head against the wall all morning trying to find a way to have that broad view all at the same time.
It's almost two different purposes. I look at it. One's the project management aspect of a Kanban or something like that. The other is, the cascading strategy type stuff. Cascading down from vision, from corporate down to the product level, even to the initiative level. And I think there are some tools that try to do that, but it's not easy, especially because it's sort of forest for trees and trees, with that matter. So
the only thing I can think of is something like a mind map, where you're big things in the middle and then you break it off.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I started playing with, but was hoping that there was a better holistic view.
Well, and to tie it back, let's make sure part of that is talking about the why in the markets that we're going to go into as we do that type of stuff. With that, I am going to go to the poll. The poll this week was, what is the best way to identify new markets and segments to move your product into? The options were ask sales where they see opportunity, talk with leadership about their strategy, analyze your customer base for people not in your traditional market discovery based on assumptions, or other it depends. This is one that I answered the analyze your customer base for people not in your traditional market. That got 50% of the votes. Second was market discovery based on assumptions. We talked about the market discovery based on assumptions, and my answer, I put that would have been my answer to one of the key things to do. I have Peter Drucker, I think that's my second reference today. Peter Drucker says one of the key places to look for innovation is for unexpected success. And he talks about looking into your customer base for, do that old game from Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other, right? Find the customer or a couple customers who are in your base who don't fit your target profile, your persona, your market segment, and say, can I ask you a question? How'd you find us, right? We don't sell that we do your stuff. How'd you find us? And learn their problems. And often that's an innovator in a different segment who has a problem they need to solve. They found your thing and they're doing the jerry rigging to make it work for themselves. That's why I had it there. That's one of the key things for me is always look into your installed base and look for those people who are not looking like Nils Davis, in his comment said, find customers who are using it differently. I think those two overlap together. Steve, did you vote on this one?
Yes, I did. And I voted with you. Analyze your customer base for people not in your traditional market.
Awesome.
It's those people, I think a lot of times we look at the center, the people who are using it as intended. And they give us like tiny little improvements, like could you, make this button a little bit bigger, or could you move that chat bot out of the way of the button I'm trying to click? I mean, really minor stuff. And the people on the edges, the statistical edges, are saying, I'm trying to use your products in ways you never intended.
Off-label.
I'm getting these results, right? And gosh, maybe that's a whole new application we never really thought about.
No, I exactly where my head was with this. Cory, you also voted for analyze your customer base. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, the other answers I was having a negative reaction to. That's the only one I had a slightly less negative reaction to because frankly, if leadership or sales or marketing or anybody else wants to go into a market for bad reasons with a bad product, it doesn't matter because people aren't going to use it.
Yeah.
So I would much rather say, how are people using the product? How are they finding value or how are they using it successfully, unsuccessfully, whatever? And let's see what new things can come from that.
No, I love it. Glenn, how did you vote?
You know what? I did not vote on that, but I put in the chat that I would have voted for analyze your customer base.
All right. Awesome. Brian.
Well, first I have to say, with Steve's love of sales, I can't believe there's no votes up there.
I know. Well, let's be honest. The first two options, ask sales where they see opportunity and talk with leadership about their strategy, were loaded questions. Somebody did go with the talk with leadership. I don't know who that was. I hope they're not on this call.
It's a career-minded person.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
but my answer was the customer base.
Awesome.
Sure. Yeah.
Calvin.
My answer was market discovery.
Okay, talk to me about that because that was the second place vote. It was 35%. That's a decent amount.
You know, I go back and forth between the two, and I think the market research background part of me says let's just understand if our assumptions are valid. Let's try and understand what the market looks like and what the what problem this might solve and validate assumptions as opposed to talking to customers that don't use the product.
So for me, most of the time when I was a product manager, I had assumptions about what could be adjacent segments, right? And so, to me, it was that I put that in there because I've done that myself, right? As I got more experienced and thought, and then read Drucker and that type of stuff, I moved to the analyze the customer base because I think it's a better way. But some people don't even have access to the visibility into that type of stuff. People aren't listed by industry or by geographic. And if you don't have that customer data to analyze to find maybe some of those outliers, or if you can't find outliers in your customer data, to me, market discovery based on assumptions would be the next one. Because you start going at, I think there's this. Go ahead.
I'm dealing with that now, and I thought, well, what am I what am I doing now? It's like I'm not going out and talking to customers. I'm looking at existing research and understanding where I think the market is going based on industry analysts and thought leaders and research and stuff like that. So it's like I haven't been talking with the customers. I've been doing more understanding the market based on existing research. So that's kind of why I leaned toward the market discovery.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the right thing to be doing. Before you go out and start talking to customers, getting yourself up to speed on the industry and so forth. And I'm reminded of a company I mentioned just a little while ago. They hired a new VP of product management who did not have any education experience other than going to school himself. And he went out to do customer discovery, and almost every question out of his lips was stupid. They're like, do teachers get paid to work here? Or, how important is your football program to the success of your college, or whatever it was? And they were just ridiculous questions that caused the president of the university to look at the colleague and just say, see, I deal with this stuff all the time,
Maybe that dummying up process doesn't work well then.
Yeah.
I don't know. Back to that, do you pay your professors? I saw a post on Twitter about UCLA trying to hire an associate professor in chemistry without any salary.
Yeah. Is that a job? What is that?
Did you see that one?
Yes.
Insane. we're getting off track, you know. And if I wanted to get Cory off track, we'd talk about the Kentucky UNC game. But
We
we
talk
won't
about
do.
a lot of things getting me off track.
That's true. We knew that naturally here. All right, Paul Hatala, you commented about it took you a moment to come to peace with semantics. Went into bricks. What did you vote for?
I went with the market discovery,
Okay.
and that assumption word came back up again. So I think that's a loaded phrase. So I can certainly see why someone would go with the analyze the market, but I think those are people that identified you, not you identifying new markets.
Yeah.
And so I thought about different areas where I've been asked, go explore blue ocean. And it was things like Brazil's the next big thing. How are we going to sell there? Or go figure out how we're going to enter the automotive market or something like that.
So geographic expansion actually may be a better place for market discovery based on assumptions, right? We're assuming that Brazil's going to be the problems for automakers in Brazil are similar to the problems to automakers in the United States. Let's go do some discovery to sort of validate those assumptions. So I guess it's the type of market, because markets could be industries, markets could be geographies, markets could be, different segments within a market of, buyer profiles of, with different value props. So I actually, you're helping me, feel better about that market discovery based on assumption as one of the options. I sort of gave two good options and two, joke options. So
maybe I should have picked other. It depends then.
Well, that's we could do that for almost everyone, right?
I can't believe that only had 2 votes. That's like a standard bearer usually.
I get it, Cory.
So the other thing that I mentioned was, it's one of the things that I like doing most is looking at stories of how products evolve over their, 5, 10, 15-year history. And you look at something like Instagram and how that moved out of market to a different thing altogether. How something like Spotify started as dudes selling snowboards, and now it's the biggest e-commerce platform, right? So there are ways to move your product away from the initial market that it's in into bigger markets that make more sense based on how good you are at a thing.
No, I that makes a ton of sense. And there are legendary stories of companies that started doing. I mean, Twitter didn't start to be what it is.
Yeah.
Right. And so part of that pivot.
I just saw, was it yesterday? I think I saw that now all New York City cabs are going to be added to Uber.
Yes.
Really?
That's pretty insane on both sides, right? That Uber would pull them in, and that the city cabs would want to do that. They obviously see enough opportunity there to do that. So that's an interesting.
The city cabs are certainly upset by Uber, and they've been shutting down. They've been having protests and such, but Uber's problem is they can't find enough drivers. But my concern is the impact on the brand, because I have been in a good many taxi cabs in New York that are not up to the quality of cleanliness I expect from Uber.
I would expect, and not that we want to go diagnosing this situation, I would expect there would be a Uber yellow, and it would be the yellow cab so you're choosing the cab versus an X, Uber, whatever it may be. Side note, if anybody's not watching the Uber or the Uber show on Showtime, it's incredible. It really is. We're really enjoying it. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is killing it as Travis. So side note on that. All right, let's get to our first questions. New question today: which is harder, moving into a new market or building a new product? And obviously, I'm not doing a yes/no binary question. This is, give me something behind which is harder, new market or new product. I'm going to go back.
Harder?
What?
What do you mean by harder?
How do you define harder? What do you think is harder for the organization to succeed at? Brian.
I would have to say probably moving into a new market. Going with that way, because I think a new product, you understand your customer base.
Okay.
And you found another need from that customer base. Or moving into the new market, you most likely don't understand them yet.
Okay. And some people will say, if you are in a very customer-centric, voice of customer company, new product easier because you can start identifying those and you can do that. I can see that. Glenn.
I think it would be building a new product on the mere fact that you have systems and processes in place that are already optimized for product, whereas you may have to do a lot of new things to join into a new market.
So new market is harder. You're agreeing with Brian.
Yeah, I would say that you have a lot of unknowns and you're going to have to build for those unknowns, be it process, team training. I mean, there's going to be a lot of extra cost. I think it'd be easier to do the new product.
Okay. Calvin.
That's a really good question, Brad.
Thank you.
I'm leaning toward what Glenn said, and for the, because I think his rationale makes sense, that if you have an existing product,
you have the processes in play to build another product.
Yeah. But at the same time, like I've been in a situation where I've built and launched a new product and been able to do it in a matter of months. Yeah.
Well, so I could see combining both Brian and Glenn, right? You should have an intimate knowledge of those customers and what their undermet and unmet problems are, and then we have a process in place. We know how to build stuff. So I can see that. I get that. Paul, back to Calvin.
If it's an MVP, you can probably launch that pretty quick, and I don't know that that's defining hard, but I mean you can get it out into market pretty quickly.
Well, but wouldn't your current product moving to a new market almost be an MVP already for that new market?
Well, I mean, I guess so. I'm actually thinking of a product that I worked on, and I was a product manager, and it's been long enough that I can use the company, if I may.
No, if you can, if you want to, but you don't need to.
Well, there aren't that many of them, and they shipped overnight products via air. I worked with. I was like, I had to check to see if I had the shirt on, and we didn't have at the time a product that did ground. So I was a product manager on ground, so you couldn't mimic what you did on air on ground, but we knew how to. We created an MVP where. Anyway, we did it very quickly, so that's kind of where how my mind was working around that.
Well, starting with an express
in a matter of months.
Starting with an express air-based thing that didn't have ground, I think most of us know what you're talking about. So,
yeah, and I'll leave it at that.
All right, Paul.
I feel like you kind of teed this up where we're already quoting other people. So I'll at least paraphrase it. It's easier to build products for people you know than to find people for products you know.
Who said that?
Some smart guy. I don't know. But I tell people all the time that my job looks really easy because it's 80% psychology. And if I already know someone, the next steps is simple math and just following the logical trail of what isn't stupid. But to then do an analysis of someone completely new from scratch and to learn from their behavior, and their behavior itself takes time to observe. So, I mean, the easiest thing in the world for me is take the people you already know and do the next thing.
Okay, I got it. We're pretty good consensus so far. Let's go to Cory.
Building a new product, because I'm assuming you're building a new product for one market, not multiple markets.
So which is harder?
Building a product for a market or building a product for
taking an existing product into a new market, or building a new product for your existing market. Which is harder?
Building a new product for your existing market
is harder.
Yes, to me.
So everybody else is saying that entering a new market is harder.
Sure.
Why do you think that building a new product is harder?
Because I think it's a level of understanding of how how the person who's using the product wants to work or needs to work is a lot different than market as an ephemeral umbrella term around all the things that that person may have context with, but doesn't affect what they're doing day to day.
Okay, I get that. Steve.
Well, I'm reminded of my own quote, which is nothing seems hard to people who don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that developers would say, oh, yes, building a product is harder than finding a new market. And that sales and marketing would say building a product is easier than finding a new market. And I think Glenn touched on it briefly with his comment of how many unknowns are there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going into, say, an adjacent market with a similar persona, but to get there, we have to take our on-prem product to a SaaS product, then the unknowns are on the product side.
Yep.
Right? If you're taking an existing product and just internationalizing it for a new geographic market, then the product piece is small, the market piece is big. But fundamentally, I certainly agree with salespeople who say it's a whole lot easier to sell something new to somebody you know. But in the end, it's what Glenn said. How many unknowns are there? The unknowns are the ones that result in difficulty.
So the real answer is our favorite answer. It depends, right? It depends on the situation you're in. The thing that I kept wanting to go to is the failure rate of product initiatives, right? So the failure rate of new product initiatives is huge, right?
95%.
Numbers, different studies, different stuff, 95, 76, whatever it may be.
I'm sorry, I'm using Christensen. He's the source. He's the king
but the 76 is Christensen too, just two different books.
He's got worse between book 1 and book 2.
Exactly.
Come on, it was two different markets, you know that.
Yeah, it was actually, I think. But the point is, if it's 95% or even just 76%, why is it? I personally, I do believe it depends, because you have to understand the situation. It's always, it depends. If you have a product that is nailing it in a certain market segment, understands the problem and the value prop, and you can identify adjacencies and do everything we talked about, right? Let's go find people who have found us. Let's go define our why and, right, do our assumptions and do our tests, right? I think that, generically, I think getting into a new market is easier than building a new product, because you already have the 80 to 85% of the product right. Otherwise, it's not right. Once you get past, if it's not 70 or 80% similar, then it becomes harder. And I think that goes to the unknowns with what we're talking about.
And let me extend unknowns one step further. It also has a lot to do with systems. If we have a systematic way of understanding a new market, or if we do or do not have a systematic way of building products, I mean, a lot of products are put together with bubblegum and baling wire.
Yep.
Right. And a lot of research is, I talked to a guy. So, how systematic are you at building products and understanding markets? And that is closely associated to the number of unknowns involved.
Which, wherever your capabilities are stronger, is going to be which is easier for you.
Right.
Right. If you're very good at doing market discovery and understanding new markets and aligning those problems and value props, taking something and adapting it is going to be easier than building something new, even if it's for people you know. But if you're really good at product development and building the right requirements and delivering on those requirements, product development probably would be easier. So again, it depends on where you are. It was just an interesting conversation to have, because I always had that failure rate in my head. And to Cory's point in the chat, yes, if you have a 30% rate of success, you're a Hall of Famer, at least in baseball, not in basketball with 3-point shooting, not in pass rates for a quarterback.
I don't know. 30% from 3-point land is pretty high.
Not all Hall of Fame, unless you're a Joel Embiid, but he's actually 35%.
Seriously, do we want to go that far into the analogy?
You know me, Steve. I lean into every analogy. All right, next question. And we got to, I might not hit everybody like I did in the last one. Where or how do you draw the line between your existing market and a new market, right? So we're talking about going into new markets. I've seen people who put, the TAM out there. The whole world is our market, right? Everybody is our market. But where do we start drawing lines as to what's our current market and what's the next market? And this is a philosophical or theoretical thing more than otherwise. Where do you draw a line? Is it 80%, right? 80% similar, 85% similar? Is it industry? Is it geography? Brian Weber.
I would say when the way you communicate with them changes,
okay,
you have a different market.
The way as in the medium or the way as in the language?
Either.
Yes.
Either, both.
And that would go with, Stu Byther, who was my MBA professor. His definition of a segment was, a group of people who have a similar need and react similarly to the same value proposition, right? And I think that's key. It's like when they react differently, when the need is different, or when they react differently, right? Or when we have to reach them through a different channel. So for you, that's even getting into distribution, right? I can reach these people directly. I need to go to these people through a channel. So I like that. That's your point. Okay, Paul Hatala.
The react differently kind of spoke a little bit to where my mind went very quickly in that I look at behavior first. And that could be to the earlier point about how you reach them, that you might learn that they like to receive information differently, or they like to process it differently. But
yeah,
if you can have a stimulus and a response and know how that behaves, and now you see that it's going to be a different interaction, then yeah, I would say that falls into that same category.
Awesome. Cory.
My first answer, the one that I came up with, was poorly.
That would go with the how do you draw them?
Yeah, I think a better answer is specifically. So specifically, we're going after these people, not these people. These people, yeah. This market, this segment, this type of person, not this type of person. Just please be specific on things.
I use this concept of the greatest common similarity. I want to draw my TAM at the greatest common similarity. I want to draw my SAM, total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, my SAM at the lowest common denominator, right? It's like this group of people does, and I'm to me, it comes back to Brian stuff as well. Calvin, Glenn, thoughts?
Yeah, and I think you've kind of.
I'm the one who asked both at the same time. My mistake.
My buzzer didn't go off.
I think you hit on kind of what I was thinking, which is based on customer need. If the customer needs are going to be slightly different from one market to another, then you draw a line to the distinction between the two.
Okay, I like that, Glenn.
It's a reiteration, but persona and problem.
Okay, so if you can really start driving in on the persona and the problem, and I'm going to sort of extend on that and say it's more the value, persona and value, because you can solve the same problem in different ways. It's the value of how you solve it. But I mean, that's what we talk about when we talk about how you define the market maps, right? It's personas who act similar with similar needs and the different way, the value for solving that need for them.
Which is inclusive of Ryan's point. You're going to message to those people differently.
Yeah, and perhaps reach them through different mediums and even sales channels.
Yeah.
So, point. Steve.
Yeah, I guess I'll do a yes and to all of the above. I was thinking buying behavior or buying preferences. So I went straight to personas. I mean, if the persona, I've certainly said this to many sales training events. If the persona changes, if the buyer persona changes, then you need a new sales force.
Yeah.
Or a new or an existing sales force that can understand that. But if you've got a change in buying preferences, suddenly it's like these people prefer to buy direct, these people prefer to buy through distribution, these people prefer to buy on the web, or government has their massive RFP as opposed to, you know, a startup who says, oh shoot, is that all it is? Here, let me do a Venmo.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, it's buying practices, which implies an understanding of personas and what they value.
No.
So yes, and.
Well, it's interesting. In one of my favorite books recently, Grassroots Strategy, which is, I think it's behind Steve's book because Steve's is more important to me. They talk about product-based segmentation. But when you talk about product-based segmentation, they're really talking about problem and value-based segmentation. And I could see that. So, all right, time to go to our lightning round question. When should you be looking to market development for growth? And I'm going to start with Calvin. Calvin, when should you be looking to market development for growth?
My first thought was always.
That's a good answer. So first answer is always. Okay. Brian.
Yeah, I have to push back on the always. I would say, because mine's more when shouldn't you be looking for it? And I would say when you're not fulfilling the needs of who your original market is, you shouldn't be looking to expand.
I like that a lot. Okay. So you're now saying focus on it when you've now fully fulfilled those of your current market that you're targeting. All right. Glenn.
A little bit of combination of both. When you know you're getting close to saturating your market, you should already have had that engine fired up.
Yeah.
And also roadmaps being what they are, they last 3 months. Things change so fast. Like I would say even like on a 3-month timing, you should have some kind of new market revelation or something.
So a cycle
at a minimum. Cycle.
Okay. I can sort of see that. Paul.
Yeah, so combining a couple there, having an eye for where prospective markets are is probably an always activity, but you need to nail it before you act on it. Nail your existing one, demonstrate that you can actually be successful before you act on that.
Okay. Well, and the question I could say is, when does nailing it come? Where in that S curve, right? Is it once you've gotten the hockey stick going, then it's on cruise control and you can start looking at my first
other topic probably.
Yeah. Cory.
Not a great answer, but the best thing I can think of is when you're close to being stuck.
Okay.
I mean, I would say that you would need to have some kind of KPI that defines for your company what saturation means.
I like that idea, Glenn. Point. Steve.
As you approach maturity in your market space, and you can do that, thank you, Glenn, through KPIs. When you start seeing your rate of growth falling, then you've got a early warning sign that it's time to start looking for either new products or new markets.
I love it.
You don't want to wait. You don't want to wait.
No, and I'm gonna and Glenn, I'm gonna take my answer from that, and I'm gonna quote Charles Handy: "A quarter mile before you should have started it."
That's why I said almost stuck.
Yeah, almost stuck. Charles Handy talks about, too often we wait too long. We should have done it a quarter mile ago or a half mile ago, but there was no signs to tell us that. I think a KPI is a great way to look at it, but normally it's before you think you should. You should have been doing it. And so I'll leave that as my answer. Thank you, Charles Handy, for the inspiration. Guys, thank you for a great conversation this week on market development. Topic that's dear to my heart. I appreciate all the insights and conversation on it. And we do these types of conversations every week in the community. Monday, the question goes in. Wednesday, the poll. And on Friday, we have these wonderful conversations where every week I say, oh my God, I learned so much, because every week I do learn so much. So I'd like to thank our panelists, Calvin, Brian, Paul, Glenn, Cory, and my partner, Steve Johnson. And thank you guys so much for a wonderful conversation. We'll see you next week. Wait, I'm trying to point to my thing and I'm doing it wrong. In the community.